right. I think we're ready. Man. All right. Welcome to the Grab Your Why podcast with me, your host, Dr. G, where we talk to and about Black men, about who we are and not just what we do, and about our relationships with ourselves, each other, and society. Man, this is a special episode for a couple of different reasons. And I want to preface this with two things. One, everything I do, I try to do it. I try to come from a place of love. I always try to stay rooted in love, especially love for my people, all my people. And when I say my people, I mean Black people, especially. I'm a lover of all of humanity, but I have a deep love for Black people across the diaspora. And so everything I do, especially as it relates to this podcast, my work, everything I do is rooted in love. The second thing, before I even developed Grab Your Why, I'd actually conceptualized something. I didn't even have a form for it yet, but something related to this topic, which if you're listening, you already know what the topic is about, or you have an idea of what the topic is about. But this is something that I had already conceptualized, and it's one of the first topics that I wanted to talk about as part of this podcast. And so this is a special one, right? I'm going to be looking over here because I had to pull up some notes, and I had to really go in and dig deep for this one. But this is about the topic of Black men and hair loss, balding. I'm going to say the word, right? The B word, balding. And I think it's okay to say that word. I know because of my own journey, which I'm going to share, like that word can feel, there's a sensitivity around that word. And when you're in it and going through it, it's hard. It can be hard, speaking from my experience at least, to say that word. But it is a word that I think is important to name, to say, and to reclaim to an extent, which I do also want to talk about. So I'm gonna give you a couple of stats here, and y'all can check me on them. But by age 50 to 66% of men will experience noticeable hair loss. So by 50 years old, right, 50%, half to 2/3 of us will experience hair loss, noticeable hair loss, right? So if you're not bald yet, you probably will be. The odds are not in your favor, and I got a head start on everybody. And I'll talk about the head start in that journey and all of that. But I also want to start with the barbershop, right? Well, number one, I don't think this is a topic that has been talked about enough, if at all, in a serious, way in pop culture or within our culture. I'll touch on some of the things that we've seen more recently, and I know just here recently, I hate to call him out, but Jaylen Brown with the Boston Celtics. I've seen a couple of clips of him going viral because of we'll call it a mishap on the court with some dye, some paint, some synthetic fibers, what have you, may have rubbed off on an opponent's jersey. But, things like that will pop up, but there's no real conversation to have, especially among Black men, about this topic, even though it impacts so many of us. But starting with the barbershop even, while I think there have been some, you've got barbershop talk, and people have definitely talked about that. I feel like especially when President Obama was elected, that's when I feel like there was an uptick in the conversation around the barbershop and the meaningfulness of the barbershop and the significance of the barbershop to Black men and the Black culture. You had the documentary that Chris Rock did about Black women in hair, but the barbershop, I think, is a very interesting place in this intersection where really identity around hair is really developed for Black men. And so I don't think it's really just like the social place or a cultural place. It's actually a place where identity begins to be developed, and is sustained and continues to be cultivated in that space, especially around our hair. And so, I think about the barbershop. Like, I even know guys who, like, they could count on a compliment from a woman every time they went to the barbershop. It was just part of their regular experience. Every time they went, whether it was a woman at the barbershop or when they left, there was a compliment. Ooh, I love your hair. Ooh, those waves, whatever that was. And the question is, like, what happens when that goes away? What does that guy do with that empty space where he's had this now for 20, 30, 40 years of getting this compliment, of that becoming part of his identity, for better or worse, but that being part of his experience and identity, to not having that anymore, right? So that's part of what I really want to talk about, and I want to do some reframing as well. So I'll go back to my story, right? And my journey, really, I'll give you the context and then I'll jump in. The context is, growing up, I didn't even go to the barbershop a lot growing up, right? Only a handful of times. My dad cut our hair. His dad cut his hair back in the day, so he learned how to cut hair. He cut hair in college a little bit, and he cut our hair. He has 3 sons and a daughter, and so he saved tens of thousands of dollars over the years just by cutting our hair at home. And so, going to the barbershop wasn't, I didn't frequent the barbershop. I understood it, and I'd pop in every now and then, but that wasn't it for me. The barbershop was at the crib. It was my mom and dad's bathroom. It was the living room. It was the kitchen or whatever, and that was that. But my hair loss journey, bald journey, my hair journey, if you will, really started my sophomore year in college. So when I went to college, I also didn't go to a barbershop. I got my hair cut by a guy who lived in a different dorm. Shout out to Josh Holly from Huntsville, Alabama. Josh would cut hair in his room. It was like $10, $15 a cut, right? Maybe 12, something like that. So, it was affordable, and he was nice, right? He was nice. And so, but my sophomore year, we both noticed I was thinning up top, right? And didn't really know what to do with that. And I remember him recommending, like, hey man, try some shea butter, put shea butter in there. And at the time I hadn't even heard of shea butter, but went to the African shop up the street, which, funny enough, I live around the corner from now and still go there to get my oils and things. And obviously that didn't work, right? Obvious, not obvious, whatever. It was bound to happen. And but what I started doing was, he started cutting my hair lower. I'm like, well, just cut it lower, right? And I started rocking it low, still getting lineups because my hairline wasn't receding. It was everything up top was thinning. So, which I guess is still receding, but either way, we're not here to be scientific. So, anyway, I started doing that. And here's the other context for you. I was at Morehouse from 2006 to 2010. This was the no hats era. This was right, you have to wear suits to Crown Forum, no hats in the building, no slides on campus, right? They were trying to make that a thing, like all these policies that didn't really allow me to hide my condition, if you will. So, that's an important piece of context to this, right? So I couldn't just throw on a hat and keep it pushing wherever I was. It was, a brother was exposed, man. I was exposed to the elements. And so what ended up happening, must have been 2008, spring break of that year. I went home for a little bit before probably went to Miami for spring break. Went home, And I told my dad, I'm like, man, my hair ain't doing what it needs to do, And at this point, I'm 20 years old, and being the good dad he is, encouraging me, nah, man, it's all right. I can work with it. I'm like, man, just cut it off, man. And in that moment, man, I was so emotional. I was angry. I felt helpless. I was frustrated. But I remember, like, man, I whatever this is, I'm not in control. And that sucked. That really sucked. And I remember telling my dad, man, just cut it as low as you can. And he did. And so he used the clippers, cut it against the grain, knocked it all off. And that was my first time seeing myself like with essentially a bald head. And, went back to school, went to spring break, enjoyed my spring break, went back to school, and that was it. And I had my clippers, and that's what I did. Even now, I've never used a razor. I only use clippers. I go against the grain. And as long as I cut it often enough, it cuts it close. It keeps it close. But, yeah, that was that. At 20 years old, I'm at Morehouse College, right? You could really think about that. I'm at Morehouse College. I'm 20 years old. I'm at the only all-male college specifically for black men in the country, and I have a bald head as a student. I felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb, inside at least. Outside, I didn't really show it. But that was a huge part of my experience of like, man, dang, I'm in the land of crispy lineups. Everybody got a Caesar. Everybody got a mid fade. Everybody got a line. Like, what? I'm in Atlanta and I got a bald head. And so there's a real identity shift that happened. And it was really challenging, right? I wouldn't say I ever I probably did pity myself at times. But the one thing I'll call out is, my boys, even though they definitely clown, they definitely got their jokes off, right? That was inevitable, but they never cut too deep, right? They never went in on me. They never went in on me in a way that was like, dang, bro, really? Oh, you really coming at me? It was like, it was jokes, but it was still all love. And so I got to acknowledge them, got to acknowledge my boys for, not cutting deep. Cause that could have changed how I felt. That could have changed my experience and my relationship with my hair or lack thereof. And so I want to acknowledge that, but while I was there, and I'll pause and say, if you're going through this right now at whatever age, and your boys are like clowning you and cutting deep, and when it's cutting deep, sometimes it's a sensitive thing already, but if they cutting you deep and they trying to hurt you, yeah, that's not your boys. Find a new circle. That's my that's my advice. But so what ends up happening to kind of move it along, my junior year, I was kind of fully in it that whole year. And then going into my senior year is when I shifted. So before that, I never rocked a beard, right? I had a goatee. I had the chin straps when I had hair. I had a goatee, just a goatee, probably like my junior year. And then the summer going into my senior year in 2009, I had an internship at Howard University. And the 2 or 3 weeks between the semester ending and going up to Howard, I just kind of let my facial hair grow out, and it started to grow a beard. And so I kind of, started to line it up a little bit. It was a little starter beard. It was all shea butter and a brush, right? No beard oil, no pick, no comb. So it was a tight curl, right? And it was a starter kit. But that's when I would say I started to shift and started to assume my new physical identity. And so, when I did that, by the time I got there, I was lining it up, and I started to get some different looks. I started to get some attention from older women, and from women who otherwise I don't think we were really interacting necessarily. And I was like, oh, okay, there's something here. It also just grew on me. It felt like it balanced out the fact that I had nothing up top. It's like, okay, now I have something down here to play with, right? And it balanced out my face. So I don't want to. I'm going to say this, and it's maybe a risk in saying it. I'm not saying I started the beard trend. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, in 2009, no one was rocking beards, right? Like, and when I say no one, I mean, you would be hard pressed to find anyone in their 20s rocking a beard. It just was not a thing. Was not a thing, right? Y'all can fact check me on that. I'm just saying, I crawled so y'all could walk. But what I am saying, I was definitely an early bloomer when it came to being bald, right? And the bald head with the beard. That was very new. And it was something that, the beard allowed me to embrace it even more fully. And that's where some of the nicknames came. So my boy Pamp, to this day, just saw him a week ago at homecoming, and he still calls me Common. I'm in his phone, I think, as Common, right? Because that's the closest reference point we had at that point, right? But that was what that was. I was able to embrace being bald as part of a new or newer identity altogether. And I think that's a really important piece here. So I want to zoom out a little bit. And I'm looking over here at my notes, but we already know, like, this topic is already kind of taboo. It's sensitive. We're sensitive about it, right? I think. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say that. I think we as Black men are sensitive about this topic for several reasons, part of which is identity, which I already talked about. But there's so many other factors, especially now when information and meme culture and all these things like that we have to contend with. There's a lot of reasons why it's taboo. But I think there's some reframing that we have to do that I think could be helpful. I think so much of balding is centered around the idea of a loss. And I think there's some truth to that, right? Or losing your hair, right? But I think there's a grief process, just like with grief in so many other ways and so many other areas, there's grief that happens, right? And so those stages moving from loss, to acceptance to like, okay, what's the advantage? So denial, anger, bargaining, acceptance, right? All of that can be applied to our hair and going bald. And I think if you frame it in that way, it gives you an ability to approach your journey and what you're experiencing with more power and from a more empowered place than a place of like deficit and loss. To me, the other pieces are like some of the things that I mentioned earlier, just how you approach it, I think is important too, right? I said it before, if your hairline is strong and you're not thinning and you got nothing up here and you're looking good, man, cut it all off or cut it really low. So you can start to see what that looks like and feels like, right? Get to know your head and your head shape. I think that is important because if and when you do go bald, you have a little bit of an advantage to kind of understanding, what that might look like and how you might want to play around with your facial hair. But that's one of the things I think you should play around with facial hair, right? If you got a beard, cut the beard down, cut it low or grow it thicker, cut it off completely and just rock the goatee. I would say if you're going bald and you thinking like, man, I'm gonna cut it all off, I wouldn't go with a razor. Actually, I would actually use clippers and use no guard, close guard, and go against the grain. I'm lighter skinned, so darker hair is going to show up differently on my head. But if you're a darker skinned guy, that might work better for you. And you might achieve the look that you're going for without having to use a razor. For me, my skin, I think, is a little too sensitive for a razor. You can do things like add glasses, right? If you already rock glasses, you wear more circular frames, throw on a square frame, throw on a circular frame, throw on thicker or thinner frames, right? Play around with colors and things to start to balance out your face and your look, right? But I think the important thing is to like approach it as a new look. This is an evolution of who you are. And I get it. It's definitely not easy. I mean, I had to do it, like I said, at 20 years old, in college, at an all black male institution. It ain't easy, right? But the advantage I have now is, when I see guys who are thinning, balding, holding on, they got the fitted hat collection. They got every MLB, NHL, NBA, and NFL team in their closet. Like, I already know what's up. Right. I can see it. I can spot it a mile away because of my experience. I feel like I'm ahead of the curve. Right. I was an early bloomer. And so, I get it. I'm sensitive to it for sure. But I'm also saying that you have power, you have agency in this thing, and you might just need a perspective shift so that you can approach it in a way that's going to be authentic to you. And it's going to be from a place of power and not a place of loss and deficit. So here's I'm going to give a couple other stats here that I pulled. Again, y'all check me on these stats. I try to pull them from credible sources, but the other two pieces here are that man units are on the rise, right? And so are hair transplants. I know my algorithm, at least, I don't know what, maybe they're trying to tell me I need to go get a hair transplant. Not going to happen. But there in 2021, there were over 700,000 transplant procedures globally. And that market is projected to hit almost $45 billion by 2033. So that's some serious movement that we see happening around men specifically, not just black men, but men who are opting out of just going bald and shaving it off and coming up with other solutions. We've also seen a lot of these man units and things, right? Where barbershops and barbers are showcasing their skills, putting these units on men, right? Many of which look sensational, right? Funny enough, I thought about getting one just for this episode, just to throw people off, but I don't have time for that right now. One of these days, I'm definitely going to do it, and I'll definitely record an episode whenever I do. But I know that the whole man unit thing has brought up a question, right? I've had this conversation with some women about, like, what do y'all think about it? And it kind of raises a question around masculinity, around authenticity, right? Is it cheating if a man is actually going bald, but he's getting a unit put on every couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks? And to me personally, I think it's fine. I think it might be important, for you to talk to your partner at some point, or someone you're pursuing at some point about that. But, I'm not against it. I would love to hear y'all's thoughts. So drop me a comment somewhere on social or something. I would love to know your thoughts. But we don't know. In the next 10 years, that might be as normalized as we see with black women in weaves and wigs. I think the conversation around wigs has evolved a ton in the last 10 years. Granted, I'm not part of that community, so I don't know all the ins and outs and can't give you the history on it. And, this may have always been a topic and always been, a thing for Black women. But to me, it's become much more normalized to talk about wigs and weaves, more so than it was, the previous 10 years. And so we might go from, y'all got protective styles, we got defensive styles. Y'all got sew-ins, we got glue-ons, right? Y'all got leave-outs and we got blend-ins. It's like it might just transition that way in the next 5 or 10 years. And so I think it's okay to leave room for us to evolve, and for how we evolve our aesthetics and what we do about that. I think it's okay. Personally, I think it's okay to do that. And then, as far as the hair transplants, like that is a major thing. I know I see tons of videos of guys even documenting their journey, right? Going to Turkey and getting the transplant, and then all the aftermath, the 6, 7, 8 months, however long it takes afterwards, and sharing that openly. And so not everyone is opting into just cutting their hair off and being bald and rocking a bald look. Guys are going for other looks, and I think that's okay too. But I do think, and I'll close it out here, but this is partially because it's my story and my journey. It's totally okay to cut it off. It is 100% okay to cut it off. And I think when we shift from feeling like, man, I'm losing this thing, to I'm evolving and I'm shifting, and we embrace that, I think we fare a lot better within ourselves. And I think we show up a lot better in the world. That doesn't mean that I still don't at times wish I still had a hairline. Not to say that I don't think about it at times, like, dang, bruh's really out here bald. I really got to shave this thing down again. Like, that is part of it. But I have learned to embrace it, and it's been a journey. I think, having fun with it, being curious, doing things that boost your confidence around who you are. I think all of that's still extremely important. So regardless of where you are in your journey, speaking directly to the brothers here, man, I'm just know I got your back. I support you. This is a safe space to talk about it. And I hope that you find other safe spaces to talk about balding and to talk about your hair and where you are with your hair. That's important. And I don't want to stop the conversation here either. I want to continue it. I want to record more episodes. I want to talk to guys about their journey. If that's something that you want to talk about, drop me a line, drop a comment as I post these on Instagram. You can I'll post this on LinkedIn as well, on my LinkedIn. You can drop a comment there. You can also shoot me an email, grabyourwhy@gmail.com. grabyourwhy@gmail.com. Shoot me an email, and I'd be glad to engage with you about this. And I want to record more content related to this topic, because I think it's one that's important. It's one that can be equally fun and funny, but also sensitive and serious. And it's one that I think deserves our best, and deserves us discussing it. So hopefully this was meaningful to you. I definitely empathize with all the brothers out there, especially at late 30s. I'm seeing a lot more brothers swinging towards my direction in terms of going bald. And just know I'm here for y'all. I'm here. It's safe on this side. It's safe on this side, fellas. But with that, I appreciate y'all indulging me. Holler at me. I'll be praying for y'all. All right. I hope you're well. This is another episode of the Grab Your Why podcast with me, Dr. G. Y'all stay cool.